Welcome to the UpKeep Pledge Pros Podcast, a podcast dedicated to unmatched value and unwavering support for our customers and the community at large. Today, we have my friend, fellow veteran, and an industry leader in the ways of manufacturing and food and beverage manufacturing, particularly, Mark Gonzalez with WildPak. Mark, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome, Mark. So Mark and I have known each other for several years. We both worked at a past company together. Mark was the plant manager. I was the maintenance manager of that facility. We hit it off immediately. We both have very, very similar styles when it comes to leadership, to optimization, to manufacturing, all those things. And I just had to have Mark on the podcast going into the food and beverage realm, particularly because next week, UpKeep will be at the Northwest Food and Packaging Expo in Portland. And I wanted Mark to weigh in on a handful of things, but also learn a lot about where Mark has come from. So Mark, before we get into all that craziness, give us a little bit of background of you and ultimately WildPak.
Okay. So I'm an operations guy. I've been doing this for about 20 years now. Got my start in operations in the military, in the Army. I did 5.5 years, did 4 years active duty. I got recalled out of the Army for another 1.5 years through the IRR, and it was quite the experience through that. But the biggest thing, the reason I am where I am today is because of the military. And I really encourage people to go to the military because it really brings out things in you that you didn't know. When I was in there, they told me mission first, people always, and I've held that through my career. I can't do my mission without my people. And I've always kept to that my people are my most important thing. So I just always, any organization I've been through, and I've been through multiple organizations through various levels, I've kept to that. You have to take care of your team. I'm not going to accomplish anything. I know the mission has changed through life, whether I'm making coffee, whether I'm making bakery products, frozen products, liquid sugar, lettuce, whatever it is I'm making. The mission is the same. I'm trying to make a finished product, but the people are the ones that make it. They're the most important ones. So when I look at things out there as the operations leader I am, I say, how do I make their life better? What am I doing? I'm a tool for you. And I try to impose that upon my team so they're aware of that kind of stuff. And the military was the one who brought all that out in me. And it's gotten me to where I'm at. And I consider myself fairly successful, and I'm happy with what I've achieved. And the military's brought that out, So I've done quite a bit, 15 years of food and beverage with some Fortune 500s, from a startup to little guys. So I've touched different things, and I've really, really just enjoyed it. Food is the area I want to be, and I've enjoyed it a lot. I want to continue to stay here.
Yeah, I know that you and I have had many conversations. I come from heavy industry, and I remember coming work for some past companies that you and I worked together in, and you started saying all these acronyms and all these things, and like, oh, you have to wear this, you can't do that, and I'm like, what? I'm like, I'm here to do maintenance and turn the wrenches and get the team going. You're like, well, this is very different, right? You can't just go in there guns a-blazing and tear a machine apart, grease and dirt and stuff flying everywhere, and then throw it back together. There's a lot of nuance to that. But Mark, you being an Army officer, my father was an Army officer. He's very similar to you, very forward, direct, a driver, people always. So I think that's wonderful, and we can't thank you enough for your service, man. It's amazing.
Thank you.
And I wanted to touch on something you and I talked about previously, and it was that when you got out of the Army, you went and worked for a very prestigious company. And what company was that?
It was for Toyota. And obviously, I never had a civilian job when I got out. I commissioned straight from college, straight into the military. So, one day I was a college student, next day I was a second lieutenant in the United States Army. So, I never had a chance to be civilian other than just hourly jobs I used to have. So that transition when I got out was interesting because I didn't want to stay in the military. I love the military. I still love it to this day. I love what I did. And
the friendship, the people.
Oh my God, the camaraderie. Nothing
Yeah.
no one unless you've been in the military really gets that camaraderie.
So true.
Build. It's, I still maintain relationships with people that I served with. It's almost 20 years ago. I was in Afghanistan with them, and I still maintain relationships with some of them. I still meet with them. And it's just, you can't explain that. So, when I was in the military, I understood what it was, but when I came out, it was quite the transition. I ended up at Toyota in New Jersey, working for a company called Toyota Logistics Services, bringing in cars from Japan. And, I don't know anything about being a civilian. I don't think about a supervisor. Here I am on second shift as a supervisor working at night by myself. And I just learned the Toyota way. I adapted, I figured it all out and everything like that. And I didn't know that they were the best. I didn't know my life was going to take me into a manufacturing world. So when I was there, I learned a lot of things. I just assumed that's just what it was. The culture of Kaizen and the culture of the people and how important they are in making a difference in what they're doing. So then I left there and went to another job. I worked for a Neutrogena at that point. I didn't have any of that stuff. And I'm like, wait, where's all that stuff at? They're like, oh, that doesn't exist. We have a CI area. And I'm like, okay, CI is good, but where's the part of Kaizen? Where's the part of engaging the people? Well, we talk to the people too. They're part of the process. And it was just like, oh man, I never realized this. So trying to get that thing was different. And it took some understanding. And years after I left Toyota, I was like, wow, I never realized that. I was at the best manufacturer. They did it the best. And I'm glad I learned about what I learned because it made a difference in what I did. But man, I kind of wish I'd stayed a little longer, realizing I was the best organization. And a lot of the things I did learn at Toyota is also what helped me keep within the manufacturing world. And I think if I had maybe gone to a different company and come into a different time, maybe I wouldn't be where I'm at today. But, for me, the biggest keys to where I'm at was that Toyota time, learning manufacturing, learning from the best, and then also that military time. So those two things I think were the keys to just getting me to where I'm at today.
Yeah, I mean, your military experience is having to perform at a high level, stressful environments all the time, right? And then you go to Toyota, which is maybe not super stressful, but you have to be performing at the highest level all the time because that's what the system prescribes, right? Um, and Toyota is just wild. I drive a Toyota. I'm a huge Toyota fan, Toyota Tacoma, right? But I think what's really, really cool about that transition is being, like you said, being able to take all of those efficient principles from Toyota and apply them into food manufacturing, right? And we know there's some super high level food manufacturers who've got it down to a science. There's no question there, but there are a lot that don't. And being able to come in as a senior leader like yourself and say, okay, I'm evaluating what's going on, I'm understanding where we are, and then I'm thinking about where I was, right? And how do I incorporate the two of them? So, do you have any examples of how, like, I know some from working with you personally, but do you have any examples as you were transitioning into these different leadership roles at these different food manufacturers that you implemented Toyota practices, maybe Gemba walks, maybe, lean principles, maybe bottlenecking, OEE, anything like that?
I think within the last organization I did, Gemba walks became frequent later on because it took, as a supervisor, I can Gemba walk with my immediate team, but the ability to drive that change wasn't as readily. So once I started achieving operations supervisor level and then plant manager roles eventually, that's when I started really doing the Gemba walk and just bringing that out, the importance of it, having the ability for our hourly team leads to see us and to listen to them. That is our purpose on the floor as senior managers, to be on the floor, engage them, to listen to them, know that we're a team walking along. I don't solve problems in any sort of conference room. And I learned that at Toyota. We spent a lot of time on the floor. Gemba walks were absolutely mandatory. And I just assumed everybody did it. So when I go to these other organizations, I didn't see it. I was just like, there was so much value to be driven from that. And Toyota, their biggest thing is about driving value. So we did things like that, do that Gemba walk on the floor. Hey team, every day, Wednesday, 10 o'clock, we're going to go meet at the sinks and we're going to go walk around the floor and we're going to go focus on this area. We're going to talk to people in the area. What are your challenges? What are your things, So I enjoy that kind of stuff because I want to hear from the person I'm trying to help directly about what they need. I do not solve that at a conference room, So I drove a lot of that kind of stuff. OEE. I learned about OEE, but once I got to the high speed manufacturing areas, at the prior company, they were a startup. Manufacturing was not exactly maybe their forte as much, but just bringing along OEE and understanding what it is and the importance of it, and then driving that down to the lowest level is so important. Getting the operator to understand what OEE is and how it's affected and what are they doing to drive it, and understand, not just say, hey, you're getting 65% OEE because that's what I want, but say, hey, look, I'm with you. I'm a partner with this. How do we do OEE? This is how it's calculated. Let's put this up on the board. Understanding those metrics and bringing it down to their level so they understand what it is, and that drives their passion to want to do it. At the prior life, we had a television screen up there that had, it wasn't an OEE, you and I debated that at some point. It was an efficiency metric that was up on the board, but helping everyone understand. It was the most watched television, photographed television I've ever seen, because people were proud of that number. It helps them understand success, right? People like to win and lose. How do we tell OEs a way to win and lose, right? Because people want to win. We inherently all want to win, but how do we win together and say, and then celebrating the wins together, right? You can't just say, good job, you got 65%. Now I'm going to go celebrate it. No, let's go celebrate it together, all of us. So it's that kind of stuff driving that, because Toyota, we did talk OEE, but there was a lot of that stuff where you did celebrate it and you drove that to the bottom. You drove that to the hourly people on the floor. And it's not inherent in every organization. And when I get there to an organization, I try to drive that culture and mentality.
Yeah, no doubt. I remember distinctly, I had my own TV screen in the production room, right, with maintenance metrics on it. And you had
Yeah.
all of what was great about yours is you had each individual work center's goals and metrics in their work center. So if you were in this one work center, you could look up and you could see you're winning or losing. You could go over to the other work center across the facility and see their metrics and say, am I winning or losing? You go
Yeah.
into the cold storage facility. Am I winning or losing? Right. And the maintenance team, they could see it all throughout the facility, but their main one was right there in the main production area. But it's so important for people who do the work to know where they stand, right? Whether it's where do I stand in my capacity to do the work,
Yeah.
or where do I stand with leadership? Do I have an engaging relationship with my leadership? Is the leadership going to come around and talk to me? Am I going to be able to tell Mark right to his face, who is in charge of this entire plant, what my problems are day to day? And you did that. I watched it unfold, and I know you did it before you met me, and I'm sure you do it now.
Right
But
now.
that is so valuable. And like we could talk all day about the ideologies of lean manufacturing and all those things, right? And it gets very in depth, more intricate than I've ever been involved of in. But like talking about OEE, overall equipment effectiveness. Yeah, you weren't giving them like the soup to nuts, most minor like detail, but the operator at the machine knew what it meant, right?
Mhm.
If I have a
Yep.
line stoppage, what is that going to affect? At the end of the day, what is our overall availability? What is this? What is that? Right? So it engages them in the process, and they become a part of it. And if they're a
Mhm.
part of it, they're more likely to cultivate it and drive it forward.
Yes.
And I know I was a part of those initiatives, and they were extremely valuable. Um, the one thing I wanted to ask you is, like, when it comes to food manufacturing, I know when I worked with you, I learned a lot. GMPs, SQF, airtight, like all these light tight inspections, and deep cleaning a machine and sanitizing it after it's been worked on, right? I never dealt with any of that. And I think that's like one of the nuances of food manufacturing. But also, if you work in a perishables food manufacturing. So it's like you can produce all the food you want, like at the fastest rate ever. But if you can't accurately store it, handle it, and sell it in a reasonable amount of time, you've wasted it, right?
Yep.
So can you speak a little bit about that nuance and how there's a little bit of strategy involved when it comes to production capacity, storage, sales? Because you and I both know we both work for companies that had an issue with selling, but they love to make a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah. So, and that part to me is the most enjoyable part about food manufacturing. That challenge in that, right? Because it's just you can make all you want, right? But it's got to be made right. It's got to be made to what the customer wants. It's got to be made safe and quality, because you don't want to hurt the customer at the end of the day, right? I'm going to make a dairy-based product, but I'm not going to refrigerate it. Sure, now you're going to kill everybody, right? Or allergens, right? Oh, I made that. I used a peanut-based product ahead of time on the line. Also, I'm going to do a changeover to a non-peanut-based thing, and guess what? I have allergens contaminating the line, so now it's going to have a crossover event. So now I put peanut allergens onto a product that is not labeled. That's a recall event, So to me, that part is the part that I enjoy the most about that quality part, making sure it's done right. When I worked at a pharma type company before in my past, it was very difficult. And, they have a lot of that like for like concept, meaning, this type of motor goes down in this pump. Guess what? You replace it with the same exact motor. Oh, I don't have that motor on hand. Guess what? You're not running. So it was really hard to manage that stuff. And I didn't like that. I didn't have fun doing that, because it was just really frustrating, because I want to run, but I also don't want to run at the sacrifice of safety and quality and all those things. So food manufacturing, you're a little creativity and things, but as long as you're maintaining food safety and quality standards, and safety standards, that's fine. You can still do it as long as it's done right, So at the end of the day, we can make all the product you want, but if it's not made right and it's not going to be purchased by the customer, and it's not going to kill, and it's not going to hurt, that's what our focus is in food manufacturing. And that to me is my favorite part. And there's little nuances that are annoying, like, oh my God, our dock doors, all of them don't go down the bottom. But then when you think about the concepts of it, well, that's a mouse. A mouse can come in. You want mouse droppings in your food? No, you're right. We don't need that, and it's all those little things that are sometimes like, who cares when you don't come from food is important. Because at the end
Right.
of the day, one thing I like to bring up to my people is, we'll be in a meeting and we're talking about food safety, and usually they've just eaten lunch or something and there'll be food out. And I'd say, hey, that food that you ate, how confident were you that it was made safely and that there was no rodent droppings, there's no earbuds, there's no hair nets,
Earbuds.
no fingernails right inside that food? Oh, I feel confident because somebody followed the rules. They followed good manufacturing practices. They did what they had to do. And if
Yep.
you don't do that, right now, all of a sudden you're going to risk it. And I say to them, hey, what happens if you found that inside your food? Would you ever buy it again? Hell no, I'm never going to eat that again. Right. So as a customer, you lose that customer because you did it that wrong. Right. So when I tell people, make sure you're doing the right thing on the floor, you're doing the right thing because you want to make sure that even though you may not eat that particular product, someone else in a different name, a different location has followed their GMPs to ensure that when you eat their product, that you're not going to find a fingernail, an eyelash,
Yeah.
whatever it is inside of there. And those are
Yep.
the important things, and driving that from all levels, from like the doctor, like you said, with light tight, all the way up to making sure you're wearing your hairnet, you're wearing your beard net. It's just part of it. And I really enjoy all that part of it. I
It
really do.
it definitely adds a level of complexity to a normal operation. I know when I worked in food manufacturing too, you use that motor as an example, and I'm out there with my team rebuilding a gearbox right on the floor because we don't have a spare motor, right? Because I walked into the similar things that you walked into, right? And those systems and those processes were not put in place. But also from like a maintenance perspective, a lot of things were different for me because you can't use certain materials on certain things can't be porous. You have to have sanitary welding. You can't have nooks and crannies for bacteria to grow. Everything has to be cleaned and sanitized every night. Everything has to be cleaned and sanitized after you've performed a maintenance function. The lubricants that we use have to be rated for food safety, right? So H1 is like food, not food contact, but food vicinity. And there's all these things that play into it. And it adds a level of complexity to being a maintenance leader too. And I know specifically with CMMS and things like that, I had to write into all of our services a mandatory checklist that was the GMP SQF checklist, which was, have I um, cleaned and sanitized? Have I accounted for all my tools? Have I ensured this and that? Um, and then when
Think about it. Think about it. Like even welding, right? You're welding over product. There's spatter and everything
yep,
stuff. You have to maintain your cleanup after you're done.
yep,
Like all those details of just in the world of maintenance that you just don't think about if you're not in food. That every single nuance, you can't just, hey, look, this belt is broken, conveyor belt, so I'm going to use this different kind of product to put a splice in there. Like, no, you can't
yep,
use that one. That's porous. It's got all these issues. It's
yep,
got rust on it or whatever it is. It's got, so it's just those little nuances make it interesting,
yep.
but doesn't make it almost impossible sometimes to overcome obstacles.
But yeah, but to a testament to you and the people who lead these large functions, right? Is it you're able to navigate that nuance, and that's extremely valuable because say you were to go to a non-food manufacturing facility where those things didn't apply, you would still have that intricate mindset, that small detail-oriented mindset where you'd be picking up even more valuable things, right? So you would be the person who's like, it doesn't the big thing, the things that separate good from great are not big, they're small.
Yeah.
And if you do very good, precise, small things over and over again, they create a big win.
Yes.
And that's what you're able to cultivate. And that's awesome. Um, I wanted to talk a little bit about um, like people and leadership. And I know we went hard on it in the beginning, which is awesome because I'm the same way. And like for now, like you've always been the leader that is available, right? You're always directly in front of the people. It doesn't matter who it is, from the custodial staff to the operator to the maintenance person to the maintenance manager to the ops supervisor, ops manager. You've always been available, and I've seen it firsthand. Um, the value that you create. by being a leader who understands and works with and builds relationships with the frontline workforce is invaluable. And we find, I know you do in operations, but in maintenance, we find that a massive disconnect for leadership and for like future scale, for building better, more optimized programs, is that the frontline worker is missing from the from
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Um, and I know when we work together, I could never find you because you were always out on the floor. You were always out on the floor, right? And everyone knew you and everyone saw you. And I just can't stress how important it is. And you're the plant manager. You were in the entire facility, and you were more available than some people who were just a supervisor,
Mhm.
right? So can you speak a little about how? I mean, I know you did, but a little bit more about how having those connections and that understanding and that line of sight to the frontline worker is so valuable.
To me, it's the most important thing. People sit there and say, "What's your most important role that you have in a facility?" Someone's going to say, "Oh, your supervisors are more important. Your production manager is more important." You know what my answer is? My team lead, my hourly team lead. They've been there the longest. You know what? Production managers and supervisors typically will say what needs to be said. That's right. With a little bit of, let's keep the bad stuff out of it. Guess what? My team leads, they're perfectly honest usually because they don't cover, not that they're covering, I get more of the
Reality.
information that the reality of
Yeah.
what I'm looking for. Stop painting me a pretty picture. I don't want a pretty picture. I want the reality of what's going on. So for me, the reason I'm doing that walk around is I want to hear the truth about what's going on. I want to talk to them, and I'm not going to them, tell me about what happened with this incident. It's not that. It's that organic engagement that I have when I'm walking around. Even just the fact that I came to say hi to you every single day. Hey, how are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. What are your challenges? So when something really happens and then, hey, what happened with this event? I get some of the details, more details than I did from the supervisor or the production manager, because they're hearing a second, third hand, whatever. I want to hear it from the source. They're my most important resource, my team leads. They tell me what's going on, and I get a little more of the insight of what happened. And not that I'm going to go throw it back in the supervisor's face
Sure.
or production manager's face. That's not what the intent of it is. It's just to understand and say, hey, look, let's be open about what's going on. Let's look at this from the full picture. Team leads should be all part of RCAs. They should be part of all these things. They're the most important resource. Your operators should be part of RCA. Everybody should, right? At the end of the day, you need to hear the truth of what's going on. Because the reality is we're going to sit here and talk about how correcting it, but we're going to correct it from something we assume based off of the SOP versus what the reality is. Yes, the SOP is supposed to reflect the reality, but we've all seen SOPs in life. We all know what they're perfect situations. The
Yeah.
reality is so many different things happen.
Yeah, that's
So
right.
I want to hear that. So for me, my engagement with my team leads is my most important resource, right? I'm going to talk to my operators too. I love talking to them. I had direct line of conversations with them. We used Slack in prior life as our form of communication.
UpKeep
I
uses
made
Slack.
it.
We use it like crazy.
A lot of companies using it now. We're using Teams here, and it's just a different version of Slack.
Yeah.
But there's good and bad to it. Like the level of engagement is good because it allowed filler operator to have direct communication with me if
That's
they
right.
needed something. Because they knew that they could, obviously everyone likes to go to the tippy top for everything, right? But at some point, they did follow the right path. Sometimes things get lost. And, I told them, hey, look, if there's something that you need on the filler, reach out to me directly. And it's nice to be able to have that conversation. Hey, Mark, I'm having this. How do I fix this? How do I do this? And then I can redirect you to my maintenance team, my
Yes.
quality team, whatever team it is, to say, hey, look, my operator told me this. This is what's going on. Hey, what can we do about this? Kind of
Right.
thing. So having that engagement, right? They see it every day. They live it. They know I'm there to help them. So then coming to me directly and having that ability to talk to me can ensure that their life becomes easier. It's one less problem. Example, we had the filler wrappers watching a line run from here to here. And I see them and they're just tapping it away and they're touching it. They keep touching it. I'm like, why do you keep touching that clamshell as it goes by? They're like, well, it's a little bit odd in the machine, when they're a little crooked, they kind of, that causes a fault. So I make sure they're straight. I go, well, why is that happening? They're like, I don't know. So being out there and talking to them about the situation, it was the conveyor gap was too big. So when a clamshell would traverse it, it would skew it at an angle, and then it would create that fault. Why don't we just move the conveyor? Let's move it an inch or two. I guess that'd be a good idea. Talk to the
Yeah.
maintenance team. Hey, Brian, what do you think about moving this? Yeah, we can move that. We slid it over an inch. Boom, problem gone. right? So, for this particular situation, maybe the filler operator didn't call it out directly as a challenge they were having, but when I brought it up the next day on the second shift and they saw it, or on the back half of the shift, they saw this, they're like, "Oh, look, that problem's been resolved. We moved that over. Cool." It's that kind of stuff that
Yeah.
being out there, seeing, talking is the things that really unlock some of the things, right? Because now my filler operator no longer has to touch all the clamshells, make sure they're straight. They can focus on the rest of the line running back and forth and everything that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know what we don't know, right?
Yep.
And the decisions and the repetitions of things that we do day to day create our reality. And if a operator is just going like this every day, that's something that they're just doing. It's something that they just do, and they don't even see that it's a problem or it's a bottleneck or it's something that's affecting the production rate of that equipment. Or maybe the way they're doing it is actually skewing the guard or the rail that guides it, right? And they're compensating for something that they're creating, right? So there's all these outcomes that can happen. But I think what's the most important thing is that you create the communication, you create the trust, the relationships. These people came to you because they know something will be done about it. And your point about everybody wants to go to the top, that's absolutely true. But the difference is being the leader that knows when to delegate away, right? So, someone comes to me, direct skips 5 people, comes to me, and I go, "Hey, have you spoken to this person?" Because we don't want to undermine that person's leadership, right? And we want to make sure that we direct them to the appropriate channels. Now, if it's something like, I know you've dealt with, even working with me, you've dealt with some very serious issues that had to come directly to you. Um, but those things. You are a very capable leader. There's some people who would be like, "Yeah, bring everything to me, and then I'm going to hold it like ammo to go after
Mhm.
all these other people," right? Or to
Yeah.
be the winner who has all the information to make all the decisions. And that's just a fallacy in thought to begin with, right?
Well, absolutely.
Um, but yeah, it's a wild it's a wild thing. Just I love talking about those little teeny things that happen in a manufacturing line from day to day. And it is where that past job is actually where I created something that I had never really created before in my maintenance process. And that was to have the first task of every preventive or inspection um, task list be to talk to that particular machine's operator before you even touch the machine.
Mhm.
So when a technician would read their task list for a maintenance inspection or PM, the very first task was go talk to the operator and ask them if the machine is performing its function or if they've noticed any anomalies in the machine's operation, whether human induced or machine induced or whatever. And what we saw there is we started to see the relationships be built between operations and maintenance.
Mhm.
So now you as the leader have set this standard of it doesn't matter who you are, we all need to communicate, we all need to do the right thing. But now we're taking and we are empowering the maintenance team and the operations team to communicate and
Yeah.
further building that trust so that when that operator does come to the maintenance person and says, "Hey, I'm noticing this thing," the maintenance technician will note that. It'll be corrective generation or inspection to be put on night shift to not interrupt operations unless it's very serious, right?
Mhm.
And then it gets resolved. And then the operator goes, "Oh my God, I said something and it's been fixed. I'm going to
Yes.
keep
Yeah.
saying things."
Yes. I'm gonna cut Mark out of it. I'm gonna go right to this so I can
Ex-
resolve my things. And then just it builds and fosters that relationship between the two of them. And I love that I loved it when you had done that with the maintenance techs to make sure that they talk to the filler operator because it was important because I've learned over time, really good filler operators own their filler. It is their baby.
Yeah.
Do not mess with my baby. He's my baby. Stop touching things. I want to know what you're doing to it. And
Right.
that to me is one of those important things that a filler operator feels like they own the piece of equipment. It belongs to them. They feel passionate about it. They want to make sure it's being taken care of. The right things are being done. They start getting engaged and now they can start doing some of the maybe that operator level maintenance, maybe the basic things, the CLIs, clean, lubricate, inspect, right? We want them to do that, right? Because I don't, I think we agree we don't want our maintenance techs to sit there per se doing all those basic things. But if I can get an operator who loves their machine, I can get you to the point where I know how to do those basic tasks.
They're
So
already there.
it frees up your tech to do whatever they got to do next. That's more complex, that's more difficult, whatever it is. And it helps even when the tech comes over and says, I have a problem. And having a good filler saying, my problem's over here. I noticed this issue and I'm seeing this. It helps at least for your tech to get right into where the issue is instead of just being, that's broken. I don't know what's wrong with it. I'm out. Like that kind of
Yes.
stuff is not the relationship we want to build. That's not an ideal kind of filler, but it doesn't help the organization overall having that kind of person, because the maintenance guy now in the future, I've dealt with enough maintenance guys. When they get that kind of stuff, guess what? They're not coming back. They're not eager. Hey, got to call on filler 6. I don't like that guy. You go take care of that. You go take care of that. You go take care of that. Right.
Yeah,
But
or
if
I'm gonna go to the bathroom, I'm gonna go eat lunch, and then I'll show up.
exactly.
Yeah.
And there's that, but when they know, the mechanic knows that the filler operator is a really good one, he's going to point him in a direction. He knows that he's coming in. He's got good information. He's going to have a good experience there. It
Yep.
works out just having that operations maintenance working together. You have the right people doing it.
Yep. And one thing, we saw was a great success was taking some very competent operators and cross training them to be maintenance technicians. We saw
Yes.
that. We saw that. We can't say any names, but we saw that very
Yep.
firsthand. In you and I, we partnered to make that happen, and
Yes.
it turned out to be the one of the best decisions that we had made. It was take a very, very competent operator who accounts for their machine, who owns their machine. They were very interested in maintenance function, and bring them in. We crossed for several months. We cross trained them with maintenance team.
Yep.
And then he became a full-time maintenance employee, absolutely crushing it, was promoted to the second level of technician within a year, right? And I'm sure he's still crushing it. So the moral of the story there is the better the relationships you build with the frontline workforce, the more opportunities that you create, not only for your business, but also most importantly, the people doing the work. And it's immeasurable. And I know you've done it. I've been a part of it. It's amazing.
And I know
I'm
that's for that one. Like it was, and that's part of our jobs as leaders to be out there on the floor engaging, right? You build that relationship. The reason that happened was because we were out there on the floor talking, and he approached us and says, "I want to do this." Because we were out there. It wasn't like we were in our office waiting for him to come tell us what he wanted to do. And it just worked out. Just the train up time was hit much faster than mechanics that we had brought in from the outside. Like the time for
way
him to respond
faster.
and take care of things was so much quicker because he understood things. So growing
Yes.
things organically from within makes such a big difference. But you got to be able to hear out what your team wants to do. What do they aspire to be? Because guess what? When positions open, knowing what they want to do, what they're trying to get to, how do I help them achieve that? It helps because when the maintenance tech quits and leaves and goes somewhere else, what do I got in pool? Guess what? I got this guy who wants to do it. How do we make it? How do we get him there? So it's a win-win because he's excited to go there. He's got skills, even though he may not have full mechanic skills, but he still gets what needs to be done. He gets the equipment, and it makes a big difference in that train up time.
Yeah. What do we call that? We call that, what we had a name for it. The skill set that he had. It was like he knew he knew like the operational business. And I'm drawing a blank. But we had a name for it, and I forget it now. Anyway,
I can't remember it.
anyway, the last question I want to ask you, Mark, and I'm going here, is what do you believe the role of CMMS plays in food manufacturing, or just in general? How has CMMS, from you being an executive level operations leader, how has CMMS played a positive role in the businesses that you've overseen?
So within the past 3, when I've been a plant manager, I've really, really got engaged into CMMS, and it's all about ease and simplicity for me when it comes to CMMS. Um, I don't know if we're allowed to say names. Has 3 letters, very
You
large.
you can do it. It's fine.
All right. I've used SAP CMMS,
Mhm,
and you know what? It's very good for what it is, but you got to be good at it, and it's
mhm.
not user friendly, right? So you're only as good as the person who's inputting the data into CMS. So when I was at one of my organizations that used it, I'm gonna say the data probably wasn't as good as it could be, as granular, right? So the job after that, we changed to a different type of CMS, different company, very simple. My God, the information came in, the way to write work orders, to do all this stuff. Did we get a lot of BS
Requests.
work orders? Yeah, the request. There was a lot of BS. There was a lot of BS stuff in there, but we worked it out, cleaned it up, said that's not a work order. But you know what? I'd rather get more information than less, and have our maintenance planner work on deleting stuff that was kind of maybe not as maintenance related on there, but it was an ability for an operator to be easy. I love simplicity, right? The military taught me KISS, keep it simple, stupid, right? So, you know, I believe in that. Even when you and I had talked CMS in our previous life with our previous CMS, simplicity was not the name of the game. Everything costs money and all this stuff.
Fortunately, someone
So,
knew it really well.
so, you know, I'm here at this place. We don't have a CMS. We're talking about figuring it out. Clearly there's a shirt, right? But Brian knows that what I'm looking for in it is simplicity, right? Because I need the data from it. How do I drive where I need to do next? Where do I need to go next, right? As a CMS, I need to take that data and be able to say, I have a pretty good memory. I can remember when things happen. Hey, Brian, there's the fourth time the conveyor belt broke, right? Let's say I don't have a good memory, right? You can go back into a good CMS and pull back the data of, hey, this is when it broke. This is the same thing again.
Who did it?
What are we doing? And who was there? Who did the PM? Hey, look, the thing on the carousel broke, right? Well, who didn't lubricate that or didn't close up whatever was supposed to correctly? Oh, this was done by so and so.
Right.
So having a good CMMS and the simplicity of it allows me to go in there and dabble in the things I need to dabble in. When it gets too complex, look, as a plant manager, we're busy. We're focusing on multiple facets within the organization. I can't get all into the maintenance part. I got to trust my maintenance manager. But look, I'm a dabbling guy. I love data. That's who I am. I like to go in there and dabble a little bit. If it's easy, I'll go in there and look around. Hey, look, I'm trending things out, looking at where the things are. And then, a good CMS enables me as a manager, especially if I'm one that's motivated to dabble in that kind of stuff. I can get in there and do that. I can tell you, and you know that, I never dabbled in what we used in the past because I didn't find it user friendly. And look, if I can't figure it out, I'm not the sharpest tool. I clearly went to the army, so I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I'm sharp enough to figure out how to do it, right? And I did it with other ones. I didn't do it with that one. So I think CMS for me makes a difference in, getting that from the two things are getting it from your operators, right? If it's easy, I can use my cell phone. I can pick it up and just take a picture and click on it. Boom. Now it's easy if I have to type in some basic words to get it done. If you have to go to transaction SR34 and then go to this page and click on this and then find the asset and all that stuff, guess what? Are you going to get anything from your operator? Absolutely not. Your mechanics can go fix it, but they're not going to probably put the work order in to say they did it because guess what? They had to go to SR34 and type in all this stuff, right? So getting the data with simplicity just makes life easy.
Yeah. And you said the key word there. You said enablement, right? CMMS is an enablement tool. It's a tool to enable the work processes that you have currently. It's an enablement tool to drive decision making. It's an enablement tool to drive financial information. A lot of people don't think about that. Drive manpower constraints and capacities, right? It's an enablement tool, but at the end of the day, it has to be interacted with correctly. And watching me, fortunately, the other CMMS you're talking about, I'm very skilled in because I had implemented it and done it for a long time. But just think if that person wasn't that skilled. Now just think that you have this system that you're paying a ton of money for, and you have somebody who's leading it that also doesn't understand it. Now that compounds down the line so far, right? You can't correlate parts, spare parts, balance, and inventory or expense inventory. You can't correlate asset costs. You can't correlate downtime costs. You can't correlate manpower costs. You can't do any of that, even though the system is capable. So we always like to say, it's not the system, it's us, it's me. It's how am I the leader, the maintenance leader, or the organization enabling the utilization, scalability, and so on for that system. And I just speaking about the past, I spent a lot of time making that system easier for the technician because I can deal with it. I know how to use it all day long. I can use it all day long. But for the technician to use it effectively and efficiently out on the shop floor, I jumped through a lot of hoops to get that into a
Yeah.
place that they could actually leverage it. And we were getting really good data out of it. But again, it's a cultural thing, right? You got to build that culture. You got to have those relationships. The technicians got to know that I'm doing this for all of us. It's not for me to keep tabs on you, right? It's for me to say, when you come to me and say, hey, I'm overworked, I've got too much work to do. And I look through our capacity and say, oh my God, you're right. We have this much backlog and this many man hours available to do the work. You're absolutely right. I need to have a conversation about hiring another technician or switching a shift around, right? So putting it into perspective, I know, so me, CMMS has always been my thing. It's like football for me, you love football, the Eagles. I love CMMS, And that's my hobby. Other than you and I
And
hanging
arm
out
wrestling and arm wrestling.
and arm wrestling. I do like arm wrestling. That's right. Um, but Mark, I mean, I'll give you the last word, man. Do you have anything you else you want to just off the top of the head?
I don't think particularly. Just appreciate you really having me on. This is interesting. I really enjoy talking about leadership and everything like that, and engagement and stuff. And it's fun when someone else has that same passion and be able to talk about it because it just comes out right. It feels good when someone else is equally passionate about the same things. And we sat next to each other, and it was really nice to have these conversations, and it was constructive. I learned off of you, you learned off of me, and it was just it's that kind of stuff. When you have a good relationship with your team, despite your role, whatever it is, supervisor, manager, ops manager, quality manager, plant manager, whatever it is, building that relationship with the team, learning with them, and being open-minded. Right? I'm the plant manager, and I'm in charge of the whole entire thing. But guess what? I'm always learning. I'm always being engaged. You have to be open-minded what you do. And, just knowing that even though we have experiences in different things, it's just, you have to be, because we don't know everything. You have to
That's
just
right.
understand it. For this current role, my first foray into the world of beverages, I'm going to learn a lot. The concepts of leadership are still the same, just engaging your people, getting them to buy into who you are as a leader, getting them to open up and trust you and say that this guy's going to make my life better, et cetera. But it's just, I think the biggest thing is just being open, learning from people around you.
And, I have no doubt that you will be successful in that. And we at UpKeep greatly appreciate you coming on and talking. I know you're a busy guy. We've been trying to drill this conversation down for like, several days. One on my part, because for some reason where I live is like the worst power ever. I lose power so often. The rains, the wind, it's just a crazy thing. But anyway, Mark, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. And I know you and I will be connecting more. I mean, we're pretty much boys. We hang out and shit. So um, I appreciate it. And on behalf of UpKeep, we appreciate your service. And we can't thank you enough for coming to the UpKeep Pledge Pros podcast.
Thank you, Ryan. I appreciate it.
Take it easy, man.
Yep.